Hello everybody and welcome back to Line of Duty after having our little tiny break. And as you can see, I'm a bit tired tonight, folks, and it probably didn't help. It was lovely to stream last night on the Space, but that tired me out a bit as well.
Yeah. And can I just say it was a fantastic it was a fantastic stream last night. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, it was sort of my idea, and I thought it'd be a bit of fun, but I thought it was a real good discussion. So
Yeah.
when we come to the end, I'll talk about it a bit more when we do our usual plugs.
So before we get into this week's episode, what were your initial thoughts on this episode?
I think this episode is so clever in so many ways because it's a lot more of the weaving of the plot with Roz and sort of her actions now. We were sort of saying last episode, you're seeing the desperation, you were starting to see it. And I think this episode, she's fully crossed. She's no longer an innocent. I think with the stuff with Tim, you could say, well, she's just covering her own back. But some of the stuff she does in this episode, you think, no, now you're actually impacting innocent people now. And it's starting to spiral. And we'll get to it. But I think the cliffhanger or the ending of this episode, I think is one of the best ones they've done. Because you really don't expect it to happen. But it doesn't feel like it's two shock tactics. And it's just such a brilliant place to go, right, this is what's going to happen next week then. And you're sort of thinking, oh, God, what's going to happen?
That was my thoughts as well, although there is a couple of issues for me in the episodes, just some slight pacing issues, but other than that, though, I thought the episode was pretty good, and the cast up in this episode, I think.
Yeah, and I think also the supporting cast, some of the stuff that's been a bit background, some of the stuff that haven't really done a lot, they're starting to show themselves. Like Huntley's team, I felt like sort of a few of them stood up.
Yeah.
Obviously, you get which we'll get into once we go through it, the husband, get a lot more sort of attention to him. And like I said, and I do think Roz is starting, if you didn't, I think this is the episode which could convince a few people who weren't so sure of Roz and this sort of character and the actress. I think in this episode, it's a really strong, convincing sort of performance.
Yeah, and the usual three Kiel also in the chat for tonight. It's
and Wendy, we got to say happy anniversary to Wendy.
Yeah,
this week.
Happy anniversary to you, and happy anniversary to you, and Aaron. And hopefully, and hopefully you had a nice anniversary, and hopefully it wasn't as because some of the some of the relationships you see in you seen in this particular program.
Yeah, if you're married in the Line of Duty world, it's never happened.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very, very rarity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we've also got Sudoku. So hello Sudoku. He was saying he was looking forward to this. And obviously our resident joker who makes Daniel not be able to speak half of the stream, Matthew.
Well, we'll have intimate
yes.
And then this episode and obviously next week's review. So let's kick off with the episode.
Yeah, so you sort of see something that was very hinted at, but you're fully seeing Kate now be pushed out and sort of not being allowed to be into meetings, and Roz is very much sidelining her.
It's like I kind of got the impression that I kind of got the impression what sort of paranoid the more sort of paranoid was actually the more sort of control freakish starts so I don't know if you get that.
Yeah, no, you sort of. I don't know if it's control freak because I think it's just her being really sensitive and knowing if somebody steps out of line too much, she's gonna lose her job. But so the way to do that is a bit of I have to keep in control. And obviously it's been established that she doesn't like Kate. She thinks Kate's sort of sticking her oar in too much. So it makes sense for her to treat Kate like that. And then, like I said, this sort of, I think the beginning is, and this is my only real criticism, is there's a bit of repeated information, I would say. There's a bit of stuff that we know.
Yeah, to me, this is what sort of series orders actually is offering from us that agitated, repeated information.
Yeah, I think it feels like a little bit like they wanted to get to a certain point by the series here.
Yeah.
And the stuff that happens in the second half is clearly what's going to motivate and what's going to push the series going forward. And this is sort of the awkward in between bit, the first half of this episode.
Yeah.
Like, there's still some good bits in it, but like I said, it feels like they're almost waiting a bit, or you can tell, like I said, when we get to the second half, there's so many big things that you think, right, that's obviously going to motivate and that's going to be big in the episodes afterwards. So, because you get that the Roz's team sort of fully realise the pictures of Tim buying the tools and wearing balaclava. And obviously, as an audience, we know that because we saw it. But obviously, for the characters, they need to know this bit of information. So that's what I mean. It makes sense in the plot why this comes and why they concentrate on it for the characters.
Also, like also as well, I think the I don't see the point where he's actually under the station because he's like the sort of comic relief.
Yeah, no, but no, he's there because AC-12 got her to lose her position.
Yeah.
And he's there.
But she's been reinstated now though, so he's kinda.
Yeah, but he's sort of, I see him almost as not. I'm not saying Buckles isn't got or he's got a bit of comedy relief in him, but I think he's there to be another obstacle to Roz.
Yeah.
And he can like outwardly be an obstacle, whereas obviously AC-12 have to do it stealthily. They have to. Well, Steve doesn't because Steve doesn't know the meaning of the word. But Kate has to do it like that, and I think he's sort of there now to be the more open questioner, to sort of say, no, this doesn't make sense. And he actually has some good points later on when he talks about the attack.
But he's kind of nonchalant. He's checking that his phone be secure.
Oh yeah, he's an idiot.
Yeah.
No denying that, but he does have a purpose. And like I said, and he's basically AC-12 got him there through their own investigation. So I think he's almost a bit of this theme in the show of AC-12 thinking they're doing the right idea or going a certain way, and it actually backfires.
Yeah.
And it actually causes more issues. Like the fact that the last series took out the current superintendent, and now they've got Hilton as the superintendent because of what they did to the last guy.
I can kind of see where Matthew's going with this, but at least it's not like hammering you
over, and Matthew, at least they've got faults, and some of them are really nasty pieces of work. Like, come on, your favourite from the last couple of series, she wasn't exactly a role model, was she?
Oh yeah, our old friend was a bit of a psycho.
Yeah. So, like I said, so we've got Roz's team sort of doing the picture thing, and then AC-12 find the pictures as well, which comes up.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, there's quite a few scenes that I found I didn't write anything for because I sort of said it felt like it was repeated information.
Yeah.
But the next big thing I've got is basically Ted goes to Hilton and sort of says, we're going to do a full inquiry. Yeah. We're going to look through everything. We're not just looking at the trapdoor anymore. We're looking at the whole sort of big picture sort of thing.
Yeah, and I just actually, you seen a comment in the chat, and till you see episode until you see episode 4, Hilton gets off for so that's
yeah, I think Hilton's such a good sort of love to hate him character. He's sort of I like a character like that now and again. That you just think, God, I hate you. God, you're annoying and sleazy.
I just think he's a bit of an arsehole, but
Oh no, he is. That's what I mean. He's so good at being that. Whereas Buckles, you can't quite take him seriously. Whereas with Hilton, you sort of can a bit more because he's sort of the. I think Hilton is such a good example of somebody going up the ladder and just not having the skills and brains to really qualify, but he just gets promoted anyway. That's what I think Hilton is. So Ted sort of says, I'm going to be questioning what Rawls, and he does bring up basically what we said is that she wasn't off sort of work or the regulation or the suspension for long. So he's basically to say to him, I'm going to look into that because she shouldn't be where she's back working right now.
Yeah.
So that's sort of calling back to Hilton's sort of the sort of deal they seem to have, or the sort of relationship, or the sort of whatever it is. It's sort of hard to qualify at this point what it is between him and Roz.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I mean. He's creepy. Hilton is creepy, and I like a pantomime villain almost.
But as I've said, Matthew, you haven't seen anything, and you haven't seen anything yet when it comes to his character.
Oh no, you really haven't. So this is a new bit of information, and I did because now obviously they're looking at Tim, or she's trying to fully sort of implement Tim as being the murderer or the balaclava man, or sort of being the main suspect to get off her back. And she's really pushing that him and Michael worked with each other, isn't she?
Like even like even though that even though that we could already tell based on the episodes previously that there's no connection. She's just hoping to pin it on Michael so that so that and producer is basically it's solving cases because she's obviously fell behind because she started the family
But I think also, and
years
the
ago.
problem is she's gone from I'm going to try and make Michael the suspect
Yeah.
to now involving Tim, to saying they were accomplices. Like the sort of lie she's trying to spin is getting more elaborate, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's sort of that's that sort of theme in books and stories is the more you try and make something up, the more you try and elaborate,
Yeah.
the more you're going to have to really struggle to get evidence and to get this to work. Because Steve, you can tell. Oh, sorry, I'm skipping ahead because we've got another interview with Michael.
Yeah.
At the prison.
Yeah, and like and on or these officers, I can't remember the
Oh,
guys.
Neil. I did try and remember his name.
He's over at the prison and he's interviewing like but like as well like who has trouble responding to the questions that he was asked and as an interviewing and kids like you had to ask him a couple of times today, what am I because he wasn't responding.
Yeah, because they, like I said, because of Roz, they're really trying to get this link, and he's just not even reacting, like, because Michael, before we've seen, he can be very emotional with his reactions. He might not verbally say anything
Yeah.
because he can't. That's like you said, he struggles.
Mhm.
But there's nothing on his face, is there? There's like
No.
no. So I think that's the biggest sort of hint of obvious tell. These two don't really have a link
Yeah.
because then they go through the phone calls and they're trying to get a phone, aren't they, link or evidence of calls,
Yeah.
and there's none. So that's like, this is what I mean. She's trying to fabricate something out of thin air.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like, this is the, oh yeah, no, well, yes, especially as what, when, who they say it to in a little bit, which I think is heartbreaking.
Yeah, but yeah, we'll get to that. Don't worry, chat. We'll get to that.
So
Yes,
now,
and so that
yeah,
says about us to oil and Britain. Yeah, you're probably right.
yeah, you
Yeah,
give
so
everything away with his face. So
yeah,
Steve has sort of been in the background at this point, hasn't he, a bit? And you're sort of
yeah,
seeing he's like, something's not right here.
yeah.
He sort of has a hunch, and you can see it's typical Steve of, I don't quite know what, but there's just something that's sort of making my senses go no.
Yeah, because he's adamant that he's adamant that like was get nothing to do with it all the way through this series so far.
Yeah, and obviously later on that means him and Kate have
Mhm.
almost, I'd say, their first proper argument, I would say, later on because of that.
Well, I can wouldn't actually say it's our first because they had because they had on after the after the island of you
Yeah, but
and series
no,
one.
he's gotten shouted at plenty
Mm-hmm,
of times.
mm-hmm,
But this is, and then this is another thing that I do like in this episode. The sort of thing that's been building up with, which is that they're both looking for a promotion. Steve
mm-hmm.
thinks one thing, Kate thinks the other, and you sort of see him sort of get quite frustrated later on with that because of Michael, because of what you were saying, and sort of what Kate ends up doing, not meaning to, but as
Yeah.
part of the undercover. But Steve is starting to, because he says to Kate,
Mm-hmm.
wasn't Roz supposed to be ill the night and the day
Yeah.
afterwards of
Mm-hmm.
when we think we're looking at the timeline and the photographs of him at the DIY shop?
Yeah.
So he's starting to think, well, the timeline, it suits, but obviously there's nothing else he can go off yet.
Yeah.
And he sort of says, which what Sudoku was saying, that there's no reason he can't be Balaclava Man, Tim.
Yeah.
Why? Because why would he go to them? Why would he start the ball rolling with Roz if he was the suspect?
Yeah.
And that's why I think Sudoku was saying before, I don't think the series, I don't know how you feel, is saying he's trying to make it out that he's Balaclava Man. I think it's just sort of,
Yeah. It's
he had
just
some
so.
stuff in his flat because of his job, and he
Yeah.
panicked and he used it in that night to get the tools.
Yeah. And see that this is one of the things that have made it sort of made it the for or somebody like said uh, because he's as he said on Barrett times and in his reviews that this series in particular is a bit convoluted and the writing.
Yeah, no, I think the whole thing with him,
Mm,
like I said, I think he panicked. It was in his flat because of his job, and
yeah,
Roz is just using that fully to her advantage to try and make
yeah,
him out to be Balaclava. But I think the show is
mhm,
quite clearly showing, and Steve literally stating in this scene that it's not him, and it doesn't make any sense for it to be him
yeah,
because of how he approached him.
mhm,
And it's sort of, and I think that's them trying to say to the audience, yeah, we're not saying he is because it
yeah,
doesn't fit, but I can see how, yeah, it does look a little bit like red herrings for the sake of it.
yeah.
Yeah, no, Wendy, there's it does you does. I remember thinking that first as well, but the next episode you sort of see why they've done it.
Yeah, the next episode sort of eyes up some of the some of the confusion of Ewan, sort of makes it a bit oh, era, but we'll carry on anyway.
So Steve, to sort of go with his whole thing of I'm just going to be like blunt instrument with her, with Roz,
Oh
gets her
yeah,
phone.
yeah, uh,
So like I said, he's fully in the I'm not going to hide like what I'm doing now. I'm just going
mhm.
to be quite bullheaded. I think it's a good description of Steve in this episode.
So he heads over to the so he heads over to the so he heads over to the station, but he instead of asks everybody to hand over the to the trap um the trap or investigation well operation trap or or he'll get the name right.
Oh, it's Line of Duty. You'll never get all the names right.
Mm-hmm.
But this, and then the sort of the next big part is this witness that comes forward now to do with Michael and his past offences.
Yeah, uh, um, like so, A and P C Jack Charles. I don't know if I'm pronouncing
Probably
um
not.
name right, but it's the best I can. It's the best I can. Um, it's the best I can do. So Eden Gerald to of a sort of honourable sort of honourable a sort of honourable essays and of you whatever they whatever they call the type in of you like that's basically or oh and then
Well, it's the one when
mhm,
they take them to like the nice room with the couches,
yeah,
and they're not there as a suspect. They've got information. So this girl at
yeah,
the time didn't think of anything of it, but when I can't remember the exact reason, but basically she's come now, and
yeah,
it's about an experience she had where a young guy
yeah,
basically grabbed her when she was walking. I
mhm,
think she was like walking home, she said,
yeah,
when on the street, called her pretty,
yeah,
and offered money for her to go to his flat, his home.
yeah. So so she's asked the series of so she's asked the series of questions before actually um b- before actually and then other than for you what's called an parade.
Yeah, because she said he never said his name, but she could obviously ID him.
Mm-hmm.
So she sort of, and as soon as she's talking, though, I don't know how you felt. You were thinking,
Yeah.
yeah, this sounds like really similar to what the previous girl said about him.
Yeah.
So before she even does the ID, I remember watching this the first time I did and just thinking, oh God, like you probably
So
have, haven't you, Michael?
yeah, it's it's almost like a carbon copy, and the first. I don't.
Yeah, so that's what I mean. Even though obviously they do sort of, they don't, obviously she can't say the name and they don't instantly show you she's identified Michael.
Yeah.
But you sort of, you go, oh no, like, because I do love what they've done with Michael in the sense that you can understand why he does what he does. It doesn't make it right,
Yeah.
but you sort of you feel almost sorry for him, and I
Yeah.
think it's sort of refreshing almost because when you think of television and the typical sort of creepy guy stereotype,
Yeah.
you don't really get characters like Michael usually. They're usually a very stereotypical sleaze, sort of horrible, sexist sort of blokes.
I think because he's got the type of the type of the type of condition he's got as well. Yellow, like okay, maybe like I'm not using what the character had actually had actually um um uh, it, but also there's an on the other side of it the actual realizes that the guys one he basically
Yeah, and I
yeah
think Sudoku's got a good comment there. It's like he just doesn't know how to talk to women or how to, if he thinks they're
yeah
pretty, how to actually do that right. And it
yeah
almost does remind you at times of a very almost a small child who
yeah
doesn't quite know how to do the etiquette or the social cues and just does it very quickly without thinking. So he does do
yeah
something stupid, but there's no malice almost to it
yeah uh,
because she. Yeah, yes, and they have their curry. Yes, there's a nice little moment with Kate and Steve.
is that um is that you kind of when is on your experience
Probably with
is
Mike,
working with
with
the
Michael, because we're talking about Michael, but with Matthew, yes.
yeah
So she does the ID, and they do deliberately sort of make it a bit of a long, like they don't, like I said, don't instantly say yeah she IDs Michael, but she does.
yeah but yeah but just before that you discover it was just before you discover it was Michael Shine it it was actually another guy that she was like oh yeah man this guy looks dead and it Elvis and that is the guy just perform like oh ish on
Yeah, so I think that was almost a bit of oh maybe she's not going to when you're
I
watching it,
uh,
but like I said, I remember just thinking at the time, yeah, it's gonna be him.
mhm,
And lo and behold,
yeah
Kate, because obviously Kate and Roz can't be in the room when she does it. They go
yeah
in the room and there's Michael. So you just think, oh yeah.
mhm,
And then so they have to go back to him in prison and say, we've had this girl ID you.
Yeah.
And just like I said, on to what we were just talking about, his response.
Yeah.
Oh, like maybe I'm just too soft. My heart was just like when he says, "Oh, I was just lonely,
Yeah.
and I really want to apologize. Can you apologize to her?" That's what I mean by the almost childlike
Yeah.
way Michael is. Because that's
Yeah.
something what a child would do. It's like, "Oh, I'm really sorry."
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I said. I think I do think Michael probably has been one of the highlights so far, writing wise and
Is
sort of
that
acting wise.
is actually a pretty good actor, or someone else? I've got to give that a
That's what I mean. Yeah,
props for that performance.
because you really, you just, he does it so well.
Mm-hmm.
What I thought was interesting in that the girl comments, the one who looked nervous in the video lineup, a bit like she's distracted by the nervousness. Well, yeah, like I said, and I think
Yeah.
because of what Roz is like at this point and what she does later on, I think from this point onwards, you are meant to question almost anything because of her.
Yeah.
And maybe that's a bit of a hint of what's to come there, Wendy, because I didn't pick that up. But yeah, you are right. So
Yeah.
because Roz has finally got something she can nail like Michael with, and it sort of adds to her case. Suddenly, Kate no longer becomes like Mr. Nobody and nobody wants to be a friend.
She's got her own is got her own tools or also the kind of cheer us or a bit also think she's well it get a bit cheer us from the together.
Yeah, and this is what Kate sort of needs in her undercover. So it is showing she is getting there, and it was a bit hard, but she's finally sort of getting that in.
Mhm.
But then you think, oh yes, she's in now. But Roz does then go, oh, so you'll be going back now then?
Yeah, but um, yeah, because she says that she it says that oh, and um um as in person, so there's no point to keep yeah this station.
So like I said, once again, you just think, oh, Kate's finally got somewhere, and then it's like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
she's still shrewd enough, Roz. She's still clever and sort of with it enough to think, yeah, no,
Yeah.
I can't fully trust you yet. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
does sort of show what you were talking about, the paranoia maybe.
Yeah.
Or just that Roz is clever. I think a lot of this episode is almost trying to show us how she's got in the position she's got in the Force. That she's not a
Yeah.
pushover. And then
Yeah.
Steve sort of comes in typical Steve fashion,
Yeah.
to sort
Uh,
of go, yeah, you think you're winning, but we're still looking at you. We're still sort of finding stuff that isn't right.
yeah. And he can, and he kind of makes a bit of a show of himself again, and
Yeah,
it's,
but it's deliberate. It's very much he knows what he's doing, Steve, when he's in this mindset, and that's what I find. I don't understand why some people that'd be annoying, but for
yeah,
me, I'm like he knows he's winding people up, and it's part of his stick.
yeah,
Yeah, Sudoku very much so.
yeah,
But like I said, this is what I think is the skill of Martin. He can play Steve so dislikable at points,
I,
but then you can really root for Steve.
I don't really get Matthew is commenting on what the hell's that meant to be.
Oh, with Matthew, it could mean anything. That you're
Mhm,
talking about Steve Matthew
mhm. I,
or Michael. I'm trying to think who you're talking about.
I don't think I don't think Matthew even
Oh no, we'll get a
got
response.
that goal.
So to sort of go with Steve, he was thinking about, oh, Roz, the time doesn't quite, one of the time works too well for her to have something to do with Tim. And now, and I do think this is when the episode, I think from this point, it does start to pick up a bit, the episode. Like I said, I think that first 10 minutes,
Yeah,
or maybe 15 at a push, was a bit slow. But I think from
yeah,
now, it starts to find it pick up with pace because he's looking at her marriage and sort of what that situation is because I still don't
yeah.
understand what you mean by the lineup.
I mean, oh yeah, it kind of means that temporary.
Oh, right, you are.
I'm assuming that's what
No, no,
he's
it
mean.
is. You are a bit slow, aren't you, man?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so this is when I think we're seeing another click of Steve's sort of cleverness
Yeah,
because he looks at the marriage aspect, and by
yeah,
looking at the phone records and the location,
yeah,
is he's realised now that sh- there's a phone call from the kids basically asking about should we get Domino's, and he works
yeah.
out, well, if she was ill at home, they
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't be asking or phoning the dad about that. So she
Yeah,
wasn't home, but the phone was.
yeah.
So I think he's starting now to slowly sort of work out, I think. Do you feel like that from this point onwards?
You get you get you get the pennies starting to drop off a bit.
Yeah, and it's sort of that Steve sense, as I sort of refer to it as in my head, of him sort of
Yeah,
having all these
yeah,
separate things, and now he's starting to slowly sort of put stuff together.
yeah,
And I think now we get an interesting next scene, which is when
yeah.
she's in the office, Roz, and what's on her computer, Daniel? What's on the little post-it?
Oh, so oh yeah, somebody's watching you, yeah, and this is the audience in, so she's kinda so or us, so or she's kinda sort of in the office, office, and she'll looks around, Kissel looks around, Sil looks around, Joe, yeah, a sort of, um, a sort of right hand, sort of, in, a Olsen and she go, and she's over it. So so you direct it but the episode. What?
Yeah, and I think it's clever because we don't know who put that post-it there. And it's
Mhm.
never sort of told after the fact. It's just you think is it one of her own team who's like saying, "Oh, some of the team are suspecting you"? Is it? It wouldn't be Kate. So you sort of go then. Buckles, like Wendy said, maybe because the camera goes to him first. It's sort of a clever little, oh, who's put that there moment.
I think, yeah, I think it actually was a date as I'll
Yeah, that's a new
call him.
name for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I agree. I think that was one of the really good scenes.
Yeah.
So Steve now does his usual, which is if I can't get answers from the person, I'll mess with their life routine.
Yeah, 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 so Steve actually was to, Eve actually goes to Ozzy's husband. Now, this is quite an interesting, also because we will learn a bit about his character, and he's also he's also I, but he's more on the sort of opposite side of things rather than the grim.
Yeah, I get the vibe almost like those accident commercials.
Yeah,
That sort of lawyer.
yeah,
So Steve is basically, and it's really clever because Steve just sort of using his own sort of quick fire questions to get the husband to say something he doesn't want to.
yeah,
So he's basically like saying, "Oh, so you did know your wife wasn't there at home that night, didn't you?" And he's like, "Doesn't," and you can see
yeah.
he's completely sort of rabbit in headlights, isn't he, Nick?
Hey, uh,
And like I said, it's sort of saying Steve's sort of quick fire thing of I'll just confuse him and he'll say something. And he does really, because he does admit to Roz not being there.
yeah.
And I think that's all Steve really wanted from him almost. He just wanted that confirmation.
Yeah, better so, you get, better so, he says that he's almost sort of put his foot in this, and
Yeah, and like I said, it's that sort of Steve sort of, and I think it's a really good setup for the cliffhanger.
yeah, and exactly that's what we're about to come on. After you give me, make a good point, and it actually, it's the ear was actually talks down whom else treats
Yeah,
them a bit like a criminal almost.
because obviously, because of Steve going to his workplace and asking these questions,
Mhm.
Nick basically says, like, I had this Arnott fella come, like, what's going on to
Yeah.
Roz?
Hmm.
And she's incredibly cagey with
Yeah.
him. And she sort of does the whole, well, it's work, I can't talk about it, it's confidential at first, doesn't she?
Yeah.
And then he asks, I think a pretty reasonable and probably what a lot of husbands would ask, which is, are you cheating on me?
Yeah. And yeah, and she says I was on shift. She says I was on shift after or whatever she says.
And I think I love his response when he goes, "You didn't answer my question."
Yeah.
And you just think like, just say no. Like, why are you being this? I don't know. Like, I don't know if, like you said, it's this paranoia or she sort of doesn't want him
Yeah.
to get involved for his own
Hmm.
sake, and she's just trying to protect him. It's you can't quite sort of understand a bit where she's coming from here
Yeah.
because she is just making herself look more suspicious to him, isn't she?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it does make you think about the disdain. Because, yeah, she does speak to him.
Also, yeah. Also, as well, you haven't touched upon you haven't touched um mm, you haven't touched upon the sort of scary aping or Aussies
Yeah, that's
you,
the. I think that's next, isn't it? After she has this argument with him.
uh, yeah,
And it is now. We sort of got hints of it, but now
yes,
we fully
yeah,
see what it's like.
yeah, um I can't I can have a funny feeling that I'll have a funny feeling in this um this episode will be he had will be he had um eyes, but as you can hear, you see by the wind it's been left untreated, untreated for so long. It's starting to upset because what and all that you said there on in the chat.
Oh yeah, she's just using like it looks like very basic antiseptic spray, and that's all right
Yeah,
if it's a little cut or if it's what it looks like, which is
yeah,
deep gorges in her arm.
yeah,
It's like you need to go to hospital.
yeah,
But like I said, I think that's what this whole theme of Roz is. She's trapped in her lie, and I think that's what they're trying to do with the character. Whereas
yeah,
Denton sort of was the one purposely lying and was very good at keeping the lies going and sort of rolling with them.
yeah,
And I just think with Roz, I think they're fully trying to say like this is what happens, that you just get worse and worse and it gets bigger and bigger. And I don't know, almost now we've said that, if almost her arm is a symbol of that. It's the imagery of what she's actually doing to herself. It's sort of a metaphor, or it's sort of hint saying this is a physical representation of what mentally or what she's just doing to herself in general.
yeah. And so, and Sadako don't actually, yeah, yeah, won't panic because I kind of agree with your point, but you understand why I say that in the next in the next episode, because that sort of comes up in that sort of comes up in the next episode. I
Yeah, and it's
do
really,
agree.
I think some people could decry like, oh God, it's all woke, it's all woke. But if you actually think about it next episode when you get to that stuff,
Yeah,
I think it's a criticism, honestly.
yeah,
But we'll get to that next episode. Like I said, there's a few things that are sort of the beginnings here, and it gets carried on. So
yeah.
now we get a new character, which I completely forgot before I watched this again. We get introduced to basically Steve's sort of replacement if he does
Oh,
get the DI job.
oh yeah, oh yeah, Amy. I and you can kinda and you can kinda actually tell by his reaction that he's that is um that is fa- that is out by his by his partner.
Well, I think it's obviously it just gets dumped on him, and we
Yeah,
know Steve never likes when anything isn't run by him, and he just gets told, right, you have to do it. But I think
yeah,
bits of Jamie are almost a mirror of Steve.
yeah.
The sort of, I say he's a lot more nicer and he's a lot more amiable,
But
but
he's still
there's a bit of cockiness in there.
I mean, again, let's have a couple of some traits as we'll talk about as we'll talk about in a moment. But he sort of uses it his advantage, whereas Eve kind of it's a big as a hindrance to or jump,
Yeah,
but
that's what I mean. I think he's like a mirror almost. He's a little bit of him as opposed to.
yeah,
And I also, the actor, I didn't click. He's from The Witcher. So obviously I would have watched this before I
ah,
watched Witcher. And I
all
watched
right,
it again and I was like, Oh, you're thinking. I can never remember the character's name. But I was like, oh, that's you. A lot younger. But yeah, he's got a very well, like, once you've seen him in one thing, you'll know who it is.
It's
And now,
yeah, it's still it still was cool. On that, or judging by the all for me still cool. On
yeah. And what Matthew said, yeah, he's a good-looking chap. That's what I mean. I think he's supposed to almost make Steve sort of stop and think because he is a good-looking chap and he's quite young, and the way he is with a witness in a bit.
yeah,
But now we sort of get to, I think I think this is brilliant for the character of Roz, what she does with the waitress coming up now.
so Hannah Hannah the waitress gets called back to with all upon of you and she was um and she was asked why she was and
I don't know, sorry. I said this is the beginning because Roz said she
sorry,
wants the waitress interviewed again. So you do start to think, okay,
yeah,
why do you want her again? And then once we get to the interview,
yeah,
it's quite horrible what she does in a little bit because we do have another bit with Jamie, and this
yeah,
is only because this is important because there's a bit more information, and that's that the
yeah,
nurse who was on like one of the floors of the flat does say
yeah,
she did see a car there
yeah,
on the night, and at first she thought it was a taxi, and that the driver was
yeah,
white.
mm-hmm,
So that's important in a minute. I mean, when we get near the end, because we now know, right, there's a car that's been sighted. And I think also, like you said, when it comes to Jamie and Steve, they have a really interesting sort of moment, don't they, afterwards?
and here we go with the comment of the night from after.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah, but here's the thing with what you were saying almost. Steve sort of because he's flirting, isn't he, with the girl, Jamie. He's sort of going,
yeah,
oh, I know that club, and like if this
yeah,
investigation goes well, I'll meet you there. And Steve sort of says, oh, you shouldn't be doing that, which is such funny
yeah,
coming from Steve.
mm-hmm,
And then Jamie basically says, well, some blokes like to do that, don't they? And I find it
yeah.
quite desperate.
I kind I kinda did have a smirk on my face, and I kinda I, uh, because I remember back to the very first them series, so it kinda made me laugh a bit.
Well, that's what it's meant to do. It's
Mhm,
because he's so unsubtly calling Steve out,
mhm,
and it sort of feeds into the whole last series bit where
yeah,
Steve was damaged, and for a bit they thought he was bent, and it was sort of this reputation he was getting. So it's
yeah,
sort of Jamie saying that is sort of hinting at Steve is getting a reputation,
yeah,
and it's not a good one, to put it nicely.
mhm,
But now we get the second interview with the waitress, and
yeah.
now we see what Roz is doing.
They so she so well she's trying to put some on that on Hannah the but she's you but she's you is some and how she um and how she achieves um and how she achieves it.
Yeah, and at this point, she sort of comes in and she sort of
Yeah,
almost tells Hannah, doesn't she? Oh, you did it for
yeah,
this reason because
Yeah.
You came into the house, he had all these tools there, you were scared,
Yeah.
he tried to
Mm-hmm.
attack you, and you self-defense. So she's
Yeah.
writing this story almost, isn't it?
Yeah.
And Hannah's just sat there going, no, that didn't happen. Like, I don't know this guy. Like, I
Yeah.
never went in the flat. And Roz, you can tell she's got her story now. She's got her sort of out, and she doesn't. And this is why I'm saying it's such an interesting and good way, I think, to do Roz,
Yeah.
because this is horrible what she does. Like, the
Yeah.
waitress is a complete innocent, because
Yeah.
Michael, he's got these tendencies and he can do these things which are stupid.
Yeah.
So you can say, well, he's not completely innocent, but he's not a murderer. Whereas the waitress, she's completely innocent. And when it comes to this whole situation with Tim and Michael, and it just feels like Roz has now really crossed the line. I don't know how you felt.
I, yeah, but she's getting more and more, she's getting more and more, but at the one of the, some, you, you kind of see the more on her hand, it sort of takes off, off aroma.
Yeah, I know Stokey's saying it wouldn't be unreasonable. No, it wouldn't, and that's my point. It wouldn't be unreasonable for her to suspect Michael. But she knows she's lying through her back teeth about the waitress. She
Yeah,
knows she's made this story to fit her need.
yeah, but
And that's what I mean about this is what I like about Line of Duty with female characters. Yes, there's a lot of them,
yeah,
and that probably is some directive from the BBC.
yeah.
But I'm sorry, do you think in today's world we would have a female do this
Mm-mm.
to another female?
Mm, I am absolutely in what, but like Bill, it's back to the of you because it's Hannah sort of makes a Hannah sort of makes a mistake makes a mistake by refusing till us um until a search on a house actually be you can conduct um you can up it so so makes it easier for the rest it
Yeah, she just sort of she falls into the trap, doesn't she? That's sort of been laid in front of her.
yeah
But and now, so we will go back to Hannah, but Steve now sees the change. So we have a quick thing of him going through the evidence. Hi,
yeah
Daddy's time. And yeah, Wendy, that was my thought because she was like, "We have to search your house," and I was like, "Oh,
yeah
have you planted something in that house?"
yeah
But we'll get to that because I think that's interesting as well when we get to that. But
yeah
quickly with Steve, he's now seen another thing that's out of doesn't make sense, and it's the forensic code that she wrote wrong.
oh yeah I mean because it's been over it's been over basically
Yeah, because basically it's been logged in like the evidence
yeah
that it's been changed or something, and obviously Steve's first thought is tampered,
yeah
and he texts Kate to check it out.
um yeah so it and was to the forensic of is bit like bit Jodie and Catch is are in arms them Oz because she wants a promotion.
Yeah, and like I think somebody said in the chat, she's very clearly the most loyal
I
and the most easy to use out of her team because Nigel, that's the name. You can see him; he's starting to question little things.
yeah.
Whereas Jodie's, you can say whatever Roz says, Jodie's just gonna follow like a little puppy almost.
I
And then we do get the results of the search at Hannah's flat, which a lot of interesting things appear.
oh yeah, like, and I don't think we can have it because you're too
No, but we can save money. There's
yeah
money like
yeah
50,000. I can't remember the exact money, but it's not like a few bits of money. There's a lot of money
yeah
for a cleaner and a
mhm,
waitress. And then there's
yeah
the nice way to say it is there's multiple DNA of
yeah
men. Let's put it that way.
yeah
And the
mhm,
one that obviously they're interested in is Tim's. Tim's DNA's there.
yeah.
And that's where I'm gonna ask you, Daniel, do you think that was planted? I think that was
Yeah,
planted.
yeah, that was actually and it from us us health because do you remember do you remember at the back do you remember in the of our
Oh, I know she's got the way to do it.
um do, do, do you remember at the of our car she was she was sort of a still in her yeah, around to the around to the samples of the DNA. So she's probably had that hash to eat and on somebody, and it just so happens that Hannah Hannah was pretty in, in, in for her to actually pull and on.
Yeah, but Sudoku thinks it could not be, and I'm really torn because the only reason that's making me think maybe not
Yeah.
is that I think it would have been really hard for her in that time to do it.
Yeah.
And I like I said, I think there's a chance it could just be, it could be that he got there without her knowing.
Yeah.
So her still claiming she has nothing to do with him makes sense, but he could have got in. I don't know. Just I think you could argue both ways, is what I'm saying. Because, like you
Yeah.
said, she's obviously got the thing in her car. She's got DNA off Tim, so she
Yeah.
could do it.
Mm-hmm.
But there's certain things with Tim. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. And that's actually fair enough. Often I think, and I think half used even confused this way.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I think there's a good chance that wasn't a plan.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, that's what I like sometimes about this show. It doesn't quite tell you. You have to sort of just puzzle it out and think about it. So now we are getting to the big cliffhanger, which I think probably a lot of people probably will just remember the cliffhanger from this episode.
Oh yeah. So Swan goes back to um Swan goes back to X or is because because something wasn't added add up with the evidence is already given and Paul Ossie's been told about he's been told about the number on the R.
Yeah, and this is why I think this sequence is so brilliant, because he doesn't know the registration because PC Binder was meant to come and give it to him, and
Yeah.
she at that point hadn't told him whose car it was. He
Yeah.
was just going to Nick's because he hadn't come to interview, and he was like, right, I'm going to come to you because you've made it now more hard work. So that's why he's going to Nick's. So he's literally on
Yeah.
the phone, like saying, right, I'm coming. And then PC Binder gets the registration through,
Yeah.
and she finds out it's Nick's.
Mm-hmm.
So then they're panicking because they're like, where's Steve gone? And Jamie
Yeah.
just sort of says, oh, he's just gone to the husband.
Mm-hmm.
And then Binder's like, well, that's the car. It was the husband's car at Tim's. So they obviously think now the husband's got something to do with Tim's murder. And Steve's gone without thinking by himself
Oh God, here we go.
to his office.
Yeah, you know exactly what's coming, chap,
Well,
because it's already happened a few times.
well, I don't think you would suspect what exactly happens. I think you think, oh, okay, maybe Steve shouldn't go by himself. And he's literally going up to the lawyer's office. And because he's been on the phone, and this is why I'm doing it bit by bit, because I do think this is a really good sequence. Because he's been phoning Nick, he's obviously not got the phone calls from anybody at the HQ.
Yeah.
So literally, he's in the elevator. Because this is, I know what the fans dubbed this. This is known as the elevator scene. So he's in the elevator, and he's listening to the messages saying, the car's Nick's. You don't go by yourself.
Yeah.
And then the doors open, and what happens?
He gets his head off and by like you think it's acting because he's being acting like he's been acting very shade 8 points throughout the episode, but obviously he's got a have on, so
Well, you know it's not him because he's just been off the phone with him. And this is what I mean by how I think this is such a good sequence. And I'll keep saying it. Because of all the moving parts. So you know now, oh, Nick's not Balaclava. But then suddenly this big bloke, because you know it's not Nick because Nick looks quite slight and not that muscular.
yeah, it's a Jimmy. I can see the
Well, we know he's been thinking about phoning him.
yeah.
But this is this is then starts off this whole thing. This is what I meant about a lot of things here to drive the rest of the series. We now know there's not just one Balaclava man.
Yeah, that's about. That's about. Yeah, them.
At least. And so obviously Steve, because he's been sticking his nose in and probably been asking too many questions, somebody has called this fella to kill Steve. Because he doesn't just bash him in with a bat, he throws him down a lot of stairs.
Yeah.
And I remember hearing some interviews about this. And all the stuff, if I'm right here, and I might be wrong, but I'm sure I was listening to an interview. And all the stuff before the fall, that is Martin.
Yeah.
So all the stuff with the bat and the fighting, that's not a stunt double. Apparently, Martin has said in interviews he really wanted to do it. He wanted to do as many stunts as he could. So all the stuff before, obviously the really crucial stuff that no actor could do, happens. That is Martin. And I think it's a really scrappy fight as well. And you can really see Steve is fighting for his life. And he's not giving up and he is trying. But this guy's just so bigger than him. Because Steve is only small, isn't he?
Yeah. It's about the height is it's about the height of this basically.
Yeah, he's a very, so he could easily get picked up, and that's what happens. He tries to fight, and he just can't. He's no match, and that's the end. And from also from interviews I've seen with Martin, apparently the fans went absolutely ballistic when this happened, when it was live shown on telly.
Yeah, like so like your reaction your reaction about like that and shall or or during not see this episode or does it happen?
Well, luckily when I first watched all these, it was years. I basically when series 6 was on, no, when series 5 was on television, that's when I started watching the show.
Yeah.
And then I went back and watched it from series 1. So a lot of the really early cliffhangers I had no idea were going to happen.
Yeah.
And I had no idea about this. So I can remember when I first watched this. And just after like just the last shot of like Steve on his back with the blood running down the face, and like that's when they're ending it. I remember thinking, no, like really panicking because I quite like Steve as a character. So I remember just thinking, oh, what? What did you think? Because I was expecting a big like text reaction off you, and I don't think I got it for this.
It's because I kind of predicted. It's because I kind of predicted that it was going to happen and that it would kind of himself into that evil of order again because it's already happened a few times. So like after like the first couple years, and like, oh my god, Jordan, I tell you, I'm going to do it again.
Oh yeah, no, I remember thinking, yeah, there's always going to come a point when he was going to have something not very nice happen to him. But I think it's the way it's shot and how you see him get picked up, you see him go down, and then I think what's worse is that you don't see him hit the stairs. You just hear the body.
It's kind yeah, it's this it's this action that
You hear like 3 or 4 smacks, and you're like, oh, that's Steve every time. So I think maybe that's what got me so much. That it probably was predictable, but I think it's how quick it happens.
Yeah,
but almost brutal it is.
Yeah, but to be fair though, you kind of got kind of got like a reaction from the next step.
Oh yes, yes, I did. So yeah, that was fun. But no, like I said, I think this is one of the better ones. I really do. I
Yeah,
think they've tried stuff like this before, and it's been nowhere near as effective. And I'll say this, and it's not spoiling anything. This sort of incident is the start of a storyline, which is one of my favourites for Steve's character. So maybe that's why I also really love this cliffhanger so much because of what happens later on down the road.
I'm sure they give kind of ultimate as or like behind the scenes, but you
But I didn't
haven't
tell you how.
exactly said, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I purposely didn't tell you this was going to happen, did I?
Well, yes, your point.
I just because obviously I was talking to you from series 5 and it was
Yeah,
a point came up and then in series 6 a point came up,
yeah,
but I purposely didn't want to spoil this for you. But like I said,
yeah.
this for me is the start of a storyline.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you start to get hints of it next episode, but it's I think what I like about it is if it was just done for shock value and it didn't have consequences and repercussions,
Yeah,
it would just feel like to me, oh, they've just done this for a big shock. Oh, we've nearly killed off our main character sort of shock that I think TV sort of
yeah,
got in a bad sort of habit of doing a couple of years ago.
yeah, and for favorite, well, on my favorite show from, even though you can see that all of that was on for a shock value,
Yeah, that's what I mean.
so it's a
I think
very so it's very difficult to convince people is that certain bits episodes will have a payoff for like go are on.
yeah, and this really does, and I think that's why I remember when I first watched it, and this is and this was the start also. And Martin had impressed me a lot before this, but this was also the start of me really getting impressed with Martin.
Yeah,
And that's
yeah,
why I really want him as a doctor.
yeah, I can kind of see why. Oh,
Oh, folks, at first Daniel was like, "Oh, you just fancy him." I can
yeah,
tell you this. He just thought I fancied Martin, but now he's watched Line of Duty up to now. He's starting to understand why it's not just I fancy him. I
yeah.
legitimately think he'd be a really good choice.
Well, well, to be honest, though, Charlotte, you've said about other um other actors as well, and you have actually said the same about as if you remember, because I had a rant about when they are other choices and the same or and the same well, and you had Eon and and uh, uh, and and on this is kids if you remember.
Yeah, so I think so. That's the episode, and I think so. In the chat, if you can start to put your scores, and if you
Yeah,
want to do your little, we like it when you have comments as well. So put some of your like a score and what your
yeah,
summary that you can fit because
yeah.
it's fun.
So Charlotte, so Charlotte, do you want to give me your or score what you will on the chat to give us and give them your scores.
Yeah, no, I'll start with the negatives because there is some in the beginning. Like I said, I think
Yeah,
this episode is almost it's that awkward point in I think a lot of series, which is we're getting near
yeah,
the midpoint now. And like I said, you can tell they obviously had the big cliffhanger plan with Steve,
yeah,
and they also had other bits that they wanted to get to, but it's it they could for an hour episode you would have to have filler to get to the big bits. It feels like almost. So I'd say there is some stuff at the beginning
yeah,
which it is a bit repetitive. It is a bit, yeah, we get this, but it's sort of needed. And you just, like I said, I did find myself when I was watching it again today, like
yeah,
purposely not writing notes down for the first 10 minutes a lot, just a few things.
yeah,
But even then, there's still some really nice little moments and some little nice one bits of dialogue. It's just like I said, the structure more.
yeah,
But that's my only real negative because I don't find the whole Tim the balaclava thing as distracting. I can sort of understand it, but I can understand why for some people it would be. But then I think to get onto the positives, I think Roz has. I think she needed to almost step up now and show really how clever she can be, how manipulative she
yeah,
can be, and sort of how far she's willing to go now to protect the lie. And the fact that
yeah.
I like the fact that it's now infecting her personal life with
Mm-hmm.
Nick and the husband, and it's sort of getting too big, and you're getting that feeling now, which I think is what they needed to go with Roz.
Yeah,
I really like sort of Steve in the regard to he's starting to piece stuff together now. He's starting to sort of put some threads together.
yeah,
I think I can understand why some people don't get the rivalry with him and Kate, but it's sort of you get the feeling that there's a reason in this episode. It might not be explained yet.
yeah,
You
and
get the feeling there's something there. That it's not just they're doing this for no reason. The writers.
yeah, 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 enhances some characters.
Yeah, and this is
Um,
what I said. I like the fact that the core characters they never remain static in this show. There were always something going on with them. And I think
yeah,
this is a nice evolution of Steve and Kate's friendship
yeah,
because I almost think I think a bit in this episode they're starting to almost get them to a breaking point. So then when what happens to Steve happens in the end, you are sort of then seeing, well, how would Kate react? Considering they have been a bit bickery this season, they have been at each other's throats a little bit. How would she react if Steve was possibly in a fatal, like near death state?
yeah,
So I think that's what I mean. It's sort of you don't get it, but as soon as the cliffhanger happens and you sort of go, okay, that sort of plays in with the rivalry.
yeah,
Um, yeah, and I just that sequence that ending 5 minutes or 10 minutes, I can't remember how long it is now. I just think that is when
yeah,
people sort of say, "Oh, I couldn't move out my seat," television, and I was gripped. Sort of, I usually go, "Really?" But that the final 5-10 minutes, it is just bang, 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 and you are sort of catches your breath. So
yeah,
I'll give this as I'll give this a 7.5 because the beginning does drag it down a little bit,
yeah,
but there's still some really good bits to this. So I'll give this a 7.5.
yeah. Right, so I am all just correct you this was in the charts a dark yeah and 6 out of 10 it also says that he still has his frustrations with the SMC series, but there's still a few good scenes and oh, she gives it an 8 out of, and she hold on to Gerard get and yeah she says it's the way that it was starting, but Alden is getting more intense. So yeah, and Matthews is 8 out of 10 solid and Stillman. Oh, he 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 kind of likes how this is inspired so oh evil, which is an interesting which is an interesting point.
Yeah, and I think that is the show is one of the shows that sort of I think isn't scared to go slow sometimes.
Yeah.
It can be really action heavy and then it can be quite slow and you have to really think about it.
Yeah. So I'm going to give this a 7.5 as well. Oh, like the episode was of this whole um sh- um short short some good performances from all the cast. The only things I would say is it's a bit unveiled. He didn't places in regards to in regards to the whole our other man being in like ye um like um like ye guys and bow and kill others. I think it's a bit over. Um, also as well, um, also was with like the pacing at the start. It kind of it kind of took a wee bit to get in. The first into the and it's sort of dragged, but and you get past the 15-minute mark, it's sped up a bit. So yeah, let them solid um um worry, but because of the slow art and if you picks, I can't give it any higher than 7.5. Oh, to be honest, but Owen and but Owen and the rest episode.
Yeah, I think that's a really good sort of way to put it.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you everybody. You've been lovely in the chat and your comments. We do really love reading them and they help us sort of. We always have a rough plan what we're going to say, but we like to sort of interact with you guys and you give us some really good ideas as well. So thank you, everybody.
Yeah, so Charlotte, so who's so who's channel you appearing on over the next week?
Right, so last night, as I referred to at the beginning, on Type 40 Live, we did our big sort of event stream, which was who we'd pick for the 14th Doctor. And I did my two picks, which were Richard Armitage and, of course, Martin Compston. So if you want to hear me talk more in depth about those two and what I think they do and what Doctors they could possibly play, And of course, then all the lads, and I do think it was a really good list we all came up with. And I think a lot of good sort of merits got talked about just to do what the Doctor is. Also, it made us talk about that a bit.
Yeah.
So if you want to enjoy that and sort of hear us all had a bit of fun with it as well, that's from last night, so that's on the Spacebook. Over the weekend, I'll be on the TARDIS Zone. I can't remember what classic it is because I don't know off to hand what's after the Space Museum.
Yes,
Remember?
Yes, I will remind us in the chat because my buddy Ansel I ever since this ever since this pandemic, my buddy Ansel my buddy Ansel gone to shut. Yeah, that's a pretty enjoyable episode. Them
Oh yeah,
Charlton.
because it was the Dalek at the end, wasn't it? So that makes sense.
Yeah,
So we tend to split it up with classic. So it'll be the first half, however past the chases. And then on Sunday, we are on Nightmare in Silver for New Who. So that's usually an interesting episode to talk about, if nothing else.
Oh, I hate that episode.
Well, yeah, I think there's some really good bits in that episode, but the overall episode, I will agree, is
But James, what's his face is a wank.
well, no, I think let's just say I really enjoy Matt playing an evil version of himself in that episode because that is what Matt can do very well. But otherwise, yeah. So if you want to see us have fun, watch that episode on
It's a
Sunday.
bit, it's a bit, it's a bit convoluted, it's a bit too convoluted. He does the alpha Matt. He's
Yeah. Well,
man and silver.
you can hear us suffer it at least, so that'd be fun. And then on
Yeah.
Tuesday, I will be with Wendy for the Type 40 Telly Club, where we're also reviewing a New Who, which is In the Forest of the Night, if I've said it right. The Capaldi episode with the trees, I think.
Yeah, but but you see, even my favorite or Capaldi, he had some he shot stories, and then and then the forest of the shite is as the prime example about them stories, but he was performance is fantastic. It's just to this it's to this give up to and it's a bit pathetic.
Well, yeah, well, obviously, the problem is in that part of Moffat's run, he kept shoehorning kids into
Yeah,
episodes, and they were not good kid actors.
yeah,
So once again, it sounds like you want to have fun with me and Wendy
yeah,
having to describe that lovely episode and talk about it with Dan and Ian and whoever else pops on with us.
yeah,
And then, of course, you've got me and Daniel on Friday, next Friday
yeah.
with the next line of duty, which I think we'll have a lot more to talk about. I've got a feeling.
Yeah, nothing. Yeah, and FM Charlotte hasn't killed me by hates them for for the idea, but if my are as a move for them, you can't be hasty.
Oh, he's going to have fun with me, folks.
Mm-hmm.
But having to watch Nightmare and then In the Forest. Let's just say that.
Yeah. And I mean, so to myself, you can catch me with Charlotte and them for the days we review episode or still don't know. Oh, and I'm going only do it for Ivan Isna, and I'll get in oh Jay and Charlotte on on a stream together to talk about what I to talk about I um to talk about I this era has this era of who hasn't 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 or for a female perspective, so Charlotte and oh there'll be a two-person panel on if I know I'll be back age if the two of them actually need me for or anything, but we'll actually but we'll but before all that though we'll a niche of series um of any sort of series worth of so on it either had Joe, but thanks to everybody in the chat, in the chat that showed up tonight as always. Hope you enjoyed, hope you enjoyed the stream. Hit the like, share, and subscribe button and hit the bell to be notified of the next bit of content on the channel. So until next so until next Friday night, guys. Enjoy your weekend and stay safe. And here's the and here and here's the channel trail.
Good night, everybody.